Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to this new mini-series we're doing called OS Wars.
Indeed, indeed.
And in the left corner we have Job Thompson.
I love Android.
And in the right corner we have myself, Ruben Peterson, being the Apple supporter. So let's debate.
Alright gentlemen, we're going to have a nice fair fight today. Now, here's how things are going to go down. One of us is going to give their point of view, benefits of one, downsides of the other, and then the other will come back with their own. I don't want any funny business going on. You understand that?
Argue to the death.
Pretty much, yeah. If you want to rebuke opinion, wait your turn, pal.
Alright, so we should settle it with a nice fair fight of rock, paper, scissors.
Righto.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. So
Alright.
it looks like you have won with rock.
Alright. Well, before I begin, just want to give a shout out to all my boys at Google, Sundar Pichai. I'm sure there's some other Google employees, I can't name any, but you're doing a great job. Let's start with a fairly uncontroversial opinion. Android. It's open source. Now, hopefully I don't need to explain why open source is objectively better than absolutely all proprietary software. For one big reason, community driven. A community will never spy on you. A community will never try and take your freedom away through malicious software. A community will never undermine your freedoms. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why I choose Android over Apple. Thank you very much.
Well, I have to say that just because it's community driven can also mean it's not always the best. It doesn't have the support, the 24/7 support that proprietary can have. And it's not always as developed. It doesn't always have the funding to get these brand new ideas.
I would like to rebuke that point, Your Honour. As for the support, this is not even a question. Open source communities, sure, they might struggle to get support near the beginning when it's just starting out. But a few years in, once the software is actually developed, open source communities never struggle to get support. Linux, for example, the majority of Linux, only 5% of Linux, which is what Android is based off, is developed by the community. The vast majority of it is developed by big companies.
Does that
like
not make it
IBM.
proprietary?
Does it not make it proprietary? No, because although it's the big companies that are making all the code, it's the community that is regulating it. They get the final say here. So if IBM, I think IBM is the biggest contributor to Linux, add some malicious software, they can wag their finger and say, no, this is not what we stand for, and we're not going to put up with it. If Apple, if Ted Ferrarini wakes up today and is like, you know what, I'm just going to put a bit of malware inside of iPhone, inside of Mac OS, and who can care? Alright, you rebuke that fact, boom, you're fired. How do you come back to that?
Who knows? But that is a solid point there. But
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to my first point. Apple is just easy to use. It's so simple. You've got a couple of ways to do everything, and the layout's nice and simple. So there's no 40,000 ways of getting lost. No, you just open your phone camera. Yes, camera, and it works. It's simple and really easy to use. Anyone from a 90-year-old to a 5-year-old can use an Apple phone. Do you not see the 5-year-olds in their little pushchairs going around being very antisocial on their tablets? That's because they're probably on iPads, being Apple. Easy to use.
Easy to use, easy to use. Let me ask you this. iPad has recently released a new feature called Stage Manager. Stage Manager is not the first... You want to guess how many ways there are to manage Windows on iPads?
4.
Okay, you were right. There are 4 different ways to manage Windows. Why? Why does Apple keep adding all these useless features? And it's the same with iPhone. We don't need a dynamic island. They're just going to kill it off in a few years anyway. So why are they developing all of this user-friendly software if they're just going to kill it off in a few years?
Well, just a break from this. Do you want to hear a good joke?
Go on.
If Apple made cars, would they still have Windows? It's not a joke, but it's something to think about.
Fair do.
Alright, on to your point.
More power to do things. Android, it's like a baby. We've seen it grown so much. From a little tiny Google project to the most used operating system on the planet. But yet it's still remained in the user's hands. You want to do something on Android? You want to uninstall your bootloader and completely crash your system? You can do that,
Just
baby.
why though?
because it's about the freedom. The freedom. So if Apple releases some dumb feature, you can say, you can't do anything. You can complain, but you can't do anything. Android releases a dumb feature, cut it out of the operating system forever.
I would like to rebuke this and say, even though you may have more power to do things, you don't necessarily need all that power. Just because you can have the latest tech doesn't mean actually you need to use it, because I'm perfectly happy with just because it works. And why do you need more power when it does the job? Leading on to my point,
Alright.
the ecosystem, and that you cannot argue with. The Apple ecosystem is amazing. It's one of the best things out there. It drags people in, keeps people with them so they don't run away, which means Apple get more money, and also really handy features like copying on your phone and pasting on your laptop, the cloud storing, the file sharing between them, and how it all nicely syncs together. So your Apple Watch will connect like that, your AirPods will connect like that. It's so simple, and the ecosystem just works really nicely together.
This is true. However, what if, say for the sake of argument, Tim Cook woke up tomorrow and says, ecosystem, done. What are you going to do? You can't... the ecosystem has become such an important part of Apple that if they were to ever compromise on that, there would be chaos. Like, people's productivity systems would be ruined just from one update. How can you work when you know that your job rests on something so fragile?
I think that's where the point comes in, saying ecosystem is a really good thing that Apple have done, because it helps people.
Oh yes,
do
of course.
So many.
It's amazing.
Thus, it is amazing. You have said it yourself. It is amazing. Right. Next point.
Alright. Better for developers. Who wants to develop on a phone they do not control? Who wants to... when you go on Android, you test a feature, it spits out an error message. You can go into the code and see exactly what went wrong. You see that on Apple? That's actually a trick question. You don't see that on Apple, because I'd say 9 out of 10 developers use Android. Apple might be, sure, more valuable to develop on.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say more developers quite often use Apple because it more function. It's easier to use, and
I understand.
it's premium.
I understand that, yeah, and of course, if you're any developer, of course you're going to want to get in on the Apple market. But just starting out, if you're some amateur developer who's making an app, it's a valuable tool.
Oh no,
and
but
of
it's
course,
really easy with like Xcode on Apple. You can literally hook it up and it can be done like that, and it's so simple, so easy to use. Apple just do it good. There's no way to put it. They'll release a feature, but when they release it, they'll release it well. So they might release it a couple of years late, but when they do it, they'll do it well, and they'll do it good, and they'll make sure there's very limited bugs in them most of the time. And overall, it's a really quality build.
Ruben, can I ask you a personal question?
What?
How many of your Apple chargers, after only a few months of use, have completely become tangled and all the plastic has peeled off so that there's exposed wires there? What was that about build quality? I thought so.
That's only ever happened to me once after 5 years.
It's understandable, but you have to look at the wider picture here. Apple phones, sure,
This is the phones.
they look great. And yeah, sure, the software, it somewhat works. But when things don't work, there's nothing you can do. It leaves you powerless. I mean, your charger's broken. If
You buy a new one.
Such is the mindset of an Apple user, unfortunately. Unable to fix it, forced to forever buy more.
But usually their build quality is really, really high. Like, your Apple phone will last you a long time.
Is the build quality high, or does the build quality just look high?
I think both, because actually you've seen all their testing with the when you drop it and they don't shatter into a million pieces. What happened to the Nokia one? That just shatters into...
That's a low blow, Ruben. That is a low blow, even from you. If we're talking Nokia here, alright, Nokia... don't mention Nokia.
Sam has a Nokia.
I know, Nokia's just a disaster. A story for another time, unfortunately. What isn't a story for another time is the price. Apple phones, it's no secret Apple phones are overpriced. They offer... I mean, just look at any Chinese smartphone. The hardware is just as good as Apple's. And how much did they come up at? I think the last OnePlus was $599. How much is a phone equivalent to that? Oh wait, it's the $1,000 iPhone 14 Pro Max.
But you're buying it second hand though. If you buy a phone second hand, that's been refurbished or been taken care of, because Apple phones last a long time, you can buy them second hand for just the same price and they'll be just as good.
This is true. However, it's not just the price which is an issue here. It's also how Apple manipulates it. For example, keeping the stock incredibly low, so there's massive queues outside Apple stores. This is a well-known fact that they do this. Or, for example, jacking the price way up just to make it seem fashionable.
But how much?
We have to draw a line here. Like Apple, for their computers, maybe their computers really do stand out in the computer eco space. I don't know
and they're
but
good computers.
But the phones, I mean. They're barely even a phone company anymore. They're a fashion company who also makes phones.
But actually, you take the top flagship of Samsung or Huawei or Google, and they're all coming at the same price. So Apple's flagship and their flagship are the same price, except for Apple just does everything good. Moving on to my dig at you. Where's your blue bubble? Green bubble.
Let's talk about blue bubbles, shall we? So. Apple.
You wouldn't be feeling blue without your blue bubble, would you?
This is an issue. The text message protocol is a protocol. It's a set of rules that are meant to be abided by all manufacturers. Apple has gone out of their way to disregard this protocol for the sake of what? For the sake of bragging rights. That's it. Let's face it.
Well, I'm in the blue bubble club, so I'm not going to talk to you.
I try, but unfortunately I'll probably break your phone just by touching it. Yeah, anyway, let's talk about an unfortunate soft spot I'm sure you're aware of. No headphone jacks. Where they at, Ruben? Where are they at?
Why do you need a headphone jack when your AirPods are wireless, your earbuds are, or everything's wireless now? So there's no
Just
need.
because something
and
can.
even if they are wireless, then actually you can just plug in their adapter, which on some of the older phones when they first made the change did come with.
How are you meant to charge your phone if it's already plugged in just so you can listen to your lo-fi hip-hop beats?
Then you either invest in some cheap wireless headphones, which you can get some for like £10.
This is the answer to everything, isn't it?
Okay.
And even with wireless, just buy more Apple stuff. That users should
don't use
have to do
headphones.
that.
Don't use headphones then.
And here's the thing about wireless headphones. The audio quality, sure, is progressed massively in recent years, but it will never be as good as wired headphones. In the same way, Wi-Fi will never be as fast as Ethernet. And also, have you seen the mics on wireless headphones? Look, I have a pair of I'd say £250 headphones, wireless headphones. They're pretty good. You want to know what the mic sounds like? And this is the same for AirPods Pros and all of them. I'll give you a quick demonstration.
Here is a quick message from editing. I am not going to play that audio because I have censored it because it was so horrible it would have burst your eardrums. So just believe me on this one. The audio quality Job gave was horrible. Much like the audio quality of the mic he was going to give an example of. Anyway, back to the podcast.
How do you come back to that?
You were going to try and say earlier that just because you have it doesn't mean you need it. I can say the exact same for Android. There are just so many options to do everything. Why do you need all these options? Just because it has it doesn't mean you need it.
It just really depends on the person. Like, Apple phones, they're made for a very specific market. Sure, Apple phones, they help to diversify. I'd say most Apple phones appeal to most people. But for that small minority of people, those power users who need their phones 24/7 and they need that kind of responsiveness and they need those ways of doing stuff, who's that for? There's an Android phone for everyone. You want a phone with really good hardware that you can configure and you have power over? Boom, OnePlus. You want a phone that just works? Boom, Google. You want a phone for developers? Boom, Google Pixel, early Google Pixels, 5A, 4A, that kind of stuff. You just can't say the same about iPhones.
Yeah, but they only ever really have one good component. Why have one good component when Apple does everything good?
They don't do everything good though. Sure, the cameras on iPhone are really good.
Camera's good, audio
But if
quality
you
is
need-
good, screen resolution good.
If you need that level of goodness, why not just buy an Android phone with a really good camera?
Because okay, so I can say if you need a really good goodness of camera, then why don't you just buy a normal camera?
Exactly.
Because
That's it,
because
this just proves my point even more.
Because professionals want a camera they can take in their pocket that doesn't affect everything else and does really well. Well, does good that is on par with all the other functions.
Well, that links back to everything really. Why don't you just buy a really cheap phone and a really good camera? It's more cost effective. It's going to cost way less than an iPhone because you still have to take the Apple tax into account.
Fair enough. Android, I'm going a long shot here. It can be very experimental and it can be unstable. You rarely get
Examples?
Can you list me some examples?
Yes.
I don't use them.
I thought so.
But they are unstable because they're open source. They can be unstable. They can be very experimental, especially if you change some of the features you're not supposed to. They can be experimental.
Sure, core Android can be experimental, but it's meant to be that way. The point of core Android at its heart, is for other companies like Samsung to pick it up and say, okay, we're going to take this model and we're going to change it for our needs. It's not Android's fault that it's unstable. It's these companies not implementing it properly.
Well, your point now.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've just turned to the page where we have all the points and there are so many options. Battery. Can we talk about iPhone battery? Sure.
Banging.
It can be good.
It will last you a day. Well, why do you need it more than a day?
Apple has good battery. They have the technology behind it. Where's the software? Android phones, nearly all Android phones have come with this. They have adaptive displays where they can change the brightness. Apple, not only do they not have features like this, because we gotta wait to implement it, guys, it's not ready. They also have been shown, or caught rather, to handicap their batteries on purpose, just so they can convince you to level up for a higher model. How can you support a company that performs such malicious things?
Well, the battery lasts you all day. Why would you need a battery that lasts you more than a day?
Travel people?
Power bank.
You what?
Power bank. Because you're going to need a power bank anyway. So because how long does an Android phone last?
Depends how much you use it.
Exactly. It all depends on how much you use it, but it probably only lasts the same amount of time as Apple.
This is true, but I still feel the need to nitpick because it really should have these features. Would you not agree that it would be leveled up?
Yeah, they probably should have the features.
Let's end on a banger, shall we? The walled garden. The truth is, Apple phones, maybe with computers, but because with Apple computers you can just uninstall an operating system and reinstall it. With Apple phones, there is no BIOS. There is no configuring. There is no uninstalling and reinstalling software.
Who would need to do this?
You do
Who
stuff.
would need to do this on a working phone?
People-
Why do you feel you need to
people who
backdoor
have-
and go against your company?
People who have perfectly functioning phones that are perfectly capable of running the new versions of iOS. For example, all the people who use iPhone 7s who have now been restricted from using iOS 8. Is it 16 or 18? What are we on?
16.
iOS 16. Not because it can't run it, but because Apple deems it can't run it.
Okay, then why do you have a slow update rollout? See, because you have to wait such a long time for everyone to get it, whereas Apple just rolls it out like that. And on top of that, Apple is secure. Being proprietary, they keep all the data and they keep it really secure because they have to due to the Data Protection Act. So it's really secure, and their
How do
passwords
you
are
know it's secure? If you can't read the code, how do you know there's not a little line at the bottom saying, oh yeah, and also track his location constantly? You can't. Sure, I love that Apple is taking steps to stand up for user privacy, and I'm sure they are doing it to a degree. But if there's no way of proving it, then it might not as well be there to begin with. And also, one more point, and this is a really sensitive one that I didn't really want to touch on, but I'm afraid we're going to have to, just because I feel like a video like this wouldn't be complete without
a video.
Podcast. You haven't got Fortnite on your phones. What is this, Ruben? How do you live? How do you live?
Well, why do you need Fortnite? It is such an addictive game. How many companies banned Fortnite? Didn't Germany ban Fortnite? We were considering banning it. And have you not seen about all the privacy it steals and all the bad stuff surrounding Fortnite?
Took a lot of that privacy in Apple.
Exactly, they value it. And it can be such a damaging thing. So I think it's a good thing that Apple that Apple took away Fortnite
Sure,
for the better of the human race.
I understand your gripes with Fortnite.
And if you're such addicted to Fortnite that you have to buy another phone, so you have to buy an Android specifically so you can play Fortnite, then I think you need to rethink your life because you have got some serious issues.
Sure, Fortnite, it's a pretty questionable game. But this just proves the point that Apple, you don't even control the software that you can install. If they were to do the same with, I don't know, what are some mobile games? Genshin Impact. You just don't have the control over that software because everything has to be done through the App Store. Sure, Google Play Store is terrible, but you don't have to install stuff purely through Google Play.
Yeah.
And I was worried you were going to say just get a better App Store because I can't really come back to that.
I was going to say, well, get a better App Store. Get a better App Store because data breaches on your App Store, you can upload anything to it. How secure is that? It isn't. So I say that is a very fair fight. If you feel free to leave who you thought won, Apple or Android.
I think that we all know there's a correct answer here.
Apple.
But anyway, it's been great fighting you. You know, it was really intense in the middle, but I think we pulled out in the end. And
I also think that next time we need to get better at this.
Yeah,
we need to get better at counter arguments because there were so many we on.
Need to watch some. Watch some
no.
Ben Shapiro videos or something because we need to up our debating skill. But anyway,
we'll get better over time, we promise. But thanks for listening.
Yeah,
and
thank you
remember
very much for listening. Leave a comment if you would like to see more of these. OS Wars is a bit of a recent idea, but I think we could do a lot with it. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. We will see you when we get round to making another episode,
which should be next week.
Or it might be a month away. You know, it's us.
We have
Please.
to take breaks.
Cut us some slack.
Goodbye.